Hey everyone, today we have a really special interview with the Cliffs of Dover team. Out of all the sim games, this is the one that's the odd duckling, and that's why it makes it so interesting. Known for its really rocky launch in 2011, this game is no longer the same game because of the silent but diligent work that Team Fusion has done to mold this imperfect product into something that is really compelling. And it's time for this game to break out of its old mold and stand on its own because Team Fusion has done a lot, and this game deserves to be reevaluated. In this interview, we talk about what happened in the initial launch back in 2011, what did Team Fusion inherit in 2017, and what has been done since then. We then talk about the things to come, including the team confirming some unannounced DLC, a big update on the status of VR, new UI changes, and more. Again, I wanted to make this video to get a discussion happening again about this game, because it's been shaped into something that is really worth talking about. This game got off to a bad start, but the team has been able to clear the way and unearth something that is worth discussing. If this is your first time here, this channel focuses on multiplayer sim gameplay. If you're into that, please subscribe. Okay, so welcome, Ole and Mike. Mike, start with you because my understanding is you're the project manager.
Yeah, I'm the
And
project manager and the formal president of the incorporated Team Fusion Simulations company, and so I am sort of like the figurehead. But we are a cooperative group.
great. And then we have Ole. Could you introduce yourself, Ole?
Yeah, I'm the lead developer of Team Fusion Simulations, heading the coding team, and responsible for the development infrastructure.
Okay, so for this title of the interview, it's funny because I came up with the title before this interview because I was talking to your PR lead, but the title of the video is going to be something to the sort of like IL-2 Cliffs of Dover, the sim that's not giving up. And I thought that was interesting because this sim, unlike all the other ones, has a really, well, I mean, they all have really unique stories, but this one's a really unique one. And I thought with the first question to kind of get the audience kind of grounded, I thought it'd be good to kind of start there. So Team Fusion and IL-2 Cliffs of Dover have two different starting points in their origin story, which is different because Cliffs of Dover existed before Team Fusion did. And I thought this would be a good way to set the table and kind of have you guys kind of paint the picture of why that is.
Okay, so I will start by saying, first of all, Cliffs of Dover was the second generation of the original flight simulator IL-2 Sturmovik, which was the greatest combat flight simulation in history. Sold huge numbers of games, made a lot of profit for 1C and Ubisoft. It took a long time to develop. The developer was Oleg Maddox, and he went through multiple publishers before 1C and Ubisoft finally came online and agreed to be the final publisher. So it had a lot of success. It went through many iterations. The first IL-2 Sturmovik, then IL-2 Sturmovik Forgotten Battles, then IL-2 Sturmovik Pacific Fighters, and then finally IL-2 Sturmovik 1946. Oleg had done improvements through the course of those four versions, but he wanted to take it much, much further. He wanted to develop a full second generation of the game. And he wanted to deal with the subject of the Battle of Britain, which he thought would be a good follow-up. But this is a very costly process. Takes a lot of time, a lot of programming changes, improvements, money, big factor. 1C was on board in the mid 2000s for this project. But by 2010, 5 years into development, they were getting alarmed with the rising costs. They lost patience. They gave Oleg a deadline, which he felt was not achievable. So he and his lead programmer left. And that left a certain void in terms of knowledge and understanding. That the team that 1C selected to complete the project according to their deadline was headed by Ilya Shevchenko, Oleg's former right-hand man, and that team published the game in 2011. However, it was clear from the start that Cliffs was not a polished release. There were a lot of bugs, both technical and in the historical performance of the aircraft. Ilya's team tried to fix the problems post-publication, but was not able to succeed to 1C's satisfaction, and development was shut down in late 2012. 1C had negotiated with Jason Williams and his Rise of Flight game engine and decided to have him adapt that to World War II and create the Great Battles series. So, Team Fusion. Team Fusion formed in reaction to the cancellation of support for Cliffs of Dover. And we were a group of flight sim enthusiasts who felt the game had enormous potential. We felt it should not have been canceled, and we wanted to develop it further. All of us, then as now, were individuals who are not in the project for profit, but rather because we loved the game, wanted to use our skills to improve and advance it. All of us were and continue to be part-time developers working in our spare time. This initially was a result of the fact that we were an uncompensated, unofficial group, and therefore we would not receive any monies or revenue share from 1C. And latterly, after we signed a contract with 1C, due to restrictions in that contract on how our development business model can function. Being a part-time development team means our pace of progress is slower than a full-time paid group. Typically, a TF member works 6 to 10 hours per week compared to, say, the 40 hours or even more that a full-time paid developer employee works. Senior members like Ole, department heads, can work up to 20 hours a week or even more as we approach publication. But we are not compensated on a salaried daily basis. Instead, we all have to wait until the game is published before we receive a share of royalties. And obviously this means with development typically taking many years, it can be a long wait. And some of our members lose patience, some of our members can tough it out. Anyway, back to the history. 1C did not initially respond to our requests for support and access to the source code back in late 2012 and 2013. As I mentioned, they decided to go with Jason Williams' Great Battles. But Cliffs continued to sell, the community was strong, and Team Fusion worked as best as we could to improve it. Finally, in 2017, after a number of approaches and after a 6-month negotiation, 1C allowed TF access to the source code and agreed to publish our work in the original Cliffs in the form of a renamed Cliffs of Dover Blitz update. And they also agreed to give us the opportunity to create a number of follow-up DLCs.
Okay, so so yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it is unlike the other games because it's not like the original development team. So in a lot of ways, Team Fusion inherited a product that was imperfect. So I would love to dial the clock back and have you all sort of revisit your initial reactions to what you received, because it sounds like you guys were working on things before you got the source code. So you guys were initially, I guess, modders, and then I guess you guys got access to the official source code, and you had to sort of like unwind it. And I mean, what was it like? I mean, was it like kind of like running up to a bowl of spaghetti, and you pull the noodle and you get to kind of see what goes along with it, like how well documented was it? I mean, was there anyone even originally from the original Blizzard Dover crew to kind of help you orientate, or do you guys have to really just sort of figure it out as you got it?
Yeah. So I would say to start, as an answer, Team Fusion received an incomplete version of the source code and the working files. The source code that we received was not the latest version. That had been lost. The version we received was found on a back office computer. Fortunately, it had been overlooked and not deleted along with all of the other ones. And we also received none of the typical utilities which normally come with a development package. That is, no importer to allow 3D objects to be integrated into the game, a map tool that was really not functional.
Right.
There was no way to create new maps for the game engine. There were no guides to show how the code functioned. I mean, there were some notes in the code in Russian, of course, on commenting on some of the work, but no systematic guide showing how or why things were done. There were no guides as to how to create aircraft performance profiles, not even definitions for what all of the various parameters meant, what the formulas were that were used to calculate performance, weapons, damage, or, there was nothing there. What that meant basically is that we had to do all of our development work by trial and error, making changes to the code or text files and then seeing what the results were. Then, using the feedback then to correct our changes and so on. Very slow process. We had no contact with the original development team. As a matter of fact, our contract with 1C said that we were not to contact Oleg Maddox and his development team. They didn't want to involve them because I guess there was some disagreement in the course of the cancellation of the project. So all of this, added certain issues in terms of our progress. But we still did, manage to make progress. A lot of the problems with the version of the game that we were given were a function of Ilya's second development team clearly not understanding how the physics engine was intended to function. I think that Oleg and his lead programmer, having left, took a lot of their knowledge with them, and it was not fully passed on. Either that, or perhaps Ilya's team was swamped with dealing with the bugs which dominated the release, and they didn't have time to learn the system. Who knows? But anyway, there was certainly, I would go in and look at the performance data for certain aircraft, and it was obvious that they hadn't looked at the historical documentation or the tests that were done by the German Luftwaffe or the British RAF or so on, and it was clear that he hadn't really looked at those, so there was discrepancies between the data for the game and what they should have been. But in addition, there are also clear structural issues which really seriously crippled the game, something which Ole could talk about, but which our initial single programmer had to deal with. This required, comprehensive rewrites. For example, high altitude performance was really badly skewed. He had to rewrite the entire combustion engine supercharger code to correct the errors there. The original game was intended to have 4 layers of cloud, short distance, medium distance, long distance, and cirrus. Initially, when it was released, it only had short distance and cirrus. Um, we worked on that, but we were never able to get the long distance clouds to work. The current game official release only has short, medium, and cirrus. This is one of the reasons why we've opted to adapt the third-party True Sky cloud and weather software to the game engine to replace the original. Anyway, I mean, I could go into enormous detail and lists of bug upon bug and issue upon issue, but I don't think we have time to deal with that. All I can say is that if we published a full list of all of the bugs and changes, it would be the size of a small book. And again, Ole can talk about that. But in terms of the major problems, we adapted the old IL-2 1946 importer so that it worked with Cliffs. And over a 2-year period, we're able to rewrite the map creation tool, which allows us to build maps. Ole, why don't you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, the thing is, what we got, I mean, before we got the source code, we were basically reverse engineering the game to fix the bugs and to make it better. When we got the source code, we found out that it's a really hugely complex engine. It's last count, or the count at that time, was 1.6 million lines of code. And we had to go on reverse engineering because what we did not get, I mean, Mike mentioned that, all the knowledge of the previous developers who had this kind of big picture because they've been working with this engine for years, all this big picture knowledge was completely lost. Yeah, so we had no idea what would happen if we change something here, what would be the side effects in a completely different area of the engine. And so in the very beginning, we started to do, or we continued to do what we did before. We reverse engineered this code, yeah, and did a lot of debugging to just find out how it works and how all those things tie together. Yeah, and today, after by now 8 years of developing, some of us have regained this idea of the big picture so that we kind of have a knowledge of how these things in this hugely complex engine work together and depend on each other and affect each other. So it's getting better, a lot better than at the very beginning. Yeah, and one of the huge tasks which Mike just mentioned was that we had no possibility of creating new maps, yeah, because the tool that was included in the source code just didn't work. And at first sight, we thought, okay, this is so completely broken that we have to build our own, which we followed for a while. But then we did another effort, and after quite a time, we got this map tool, the editor we call it. We got it working, and we started to write tools to import satellite data, public domain satellite data, to create maps. Yeah, and by now we're actually able to create maps in an in a sensible way so that it doesn't take too much time to do that. Yeah, but this was again something where one of the few developers, in this case me, was just tied up for month and month on end to get something working, which did work before, but somehow got lost and broken in the transition. Another thing where we just lost a lot of time.
So the fact that the map tool was broken initially and that it was being repaired and rewritten affected our decisions in terms of our first new DLC, which we decided to go with the Western Desert campaign in Egypt and Libya. So initially, our map tool was unable to deal with water other than sea, i.e. we couldn't create rivers or that sort of thing. So the fact that the Tobruk map would not need any rivers, everything was dry riverbeds, wadis, um, pushed us to move in that direction. So that the fact that we were restricted kind of channeled our development process.
Okay, let me ask a follow-up question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ole.
I mean, some of the things you will notice, for example, that there are no bridges on the Tobruk map, because at that point we were just unable to place bridges. Luckily, this has changed by now. Yeah, but this is one of the restrictions where we were hampered and tried to make the best of it.
So let's get a sense of scale. So basically, to kind of paraphrase a lot, you guys inherited an imperfect product. You guys were modders. You caught the attention. Negotiation happened. Then you got source code, which, some of it sounds like it was just by random chance because some janitor forgot to didn't notice a computer in the corner, and that had not the most up to date code, but it had some of the code missing the utility tools, and you guys had to sort of just tweak things and saw what happened, and you guys have been since then trying to build new utility codes and get over I don't want to and get over these restrictions. Like you guys have not been able to make rivers, but now you can. But all the big change I guess was in 2017, which was 8 years ago. And to give a sense of scale, like when and what was the most recent breakthrough of like something which was blocking you guys that you guys can now do? Like was it the rivers thing? And like how recent was that? Was that like in the last year or two?
Well,
No, that was earlier.
Yeah, that was much earlier. That was back in 2017, 2018. So in terms of our schedule, we had our negotiations with 1C beginning in November of 2016, and we finally signed a deal with them in March of 2017. We then published the updated version of Cliffs of Dover Blitz in August of 2018. And then 2 years later, in August of 2020, we published Desert Wings Tobruk. And since then, we've been developing Dieppe, and it's been a very long and slow process. But we've had a lot of goals that we have unfortunately not been able to achieve. For example, virtual reality. We initially had hoped to release the implementation of virtual reality, enable virtual reality headsets for the Tobruk release. But it became very quickly obvious that this was not possible within our limited manpower base. So we have put it off till the Dieppe or actually to the visual update release. So we are progressing as fast as we possibly can, but it has been a slow process.
So let's talk about the new expansion. So Dieppe, or also known as Fortresses and Focke-Wulfs, is the next DLC, and it would be great if you can kind of give an update on the project.
Yeah, I'll first of all add as a kind of post note to all of the previous information is that for all of us who have been involved in the project, it is clear that for all of its flaws and all of the problems it's had, the Eclipse game engine has enormous potential. Oleg built the code for this with longevity in mind, and all of the functions are there to allow the game to be developed further. Programmers can write new additions, and they will fit seamlessly into the whole. I firmly believe that Holegmatics was a bit of a genius. I think the original IL-2 Sturmovik proved that, and I think if he had been given another 2 years of development by 1C, Oleg would have created a game which would have been in every way the equal of IL-2 1946 in terms of success. The fact is, it takes time to develop flight simulators. They're very time intensive, and you look at Microsoft's flight simulator, the latest version took a very long time, but was finally released. So anyway, moving on
No,
to
actually,
Dieppe.
sorry, just one quick thing, because you made me think about this. So actually, before we switch to Dieppe real quick, I actually wanted to give you a little bit of a reaction of my reaction of when I revisited Cliffs of Dover, because so I actually played Cliffs of Dover on release. At the time, I was playing World War II Online, and I remember Cliffs of Dover coming, and we were all really excited. And the game launched, and it was a disaster on launch, and we don't need to go into that. But it was really hard, and I basically just did not play the game again up until very very recently. I've tried to play it like like during and before COVID, but I couldn't get back into it. But now I recently, as of maybe like a month or two ago, I revisited it, and it's interesting to hear you talk about how the game was really close, because you just said that if Oleg was given 2 more years, it would have been there. And it's interesting to compare it to that timeline with you guys and getting the incomplete game with no utilities and having to try to take it from there. Because now when I play the game, it's really interesting, because in my mind, I played a lot of IL-2 Great Battles, but now when I play Cliffs of Dover, it seems like it's the better engine. And I mean, I like IL-2 Great Battles a lot, and Jason did a really great job with that project. But I know that game has a lot of limitations because of its engine, and they are kind of like trying to make the best out of that situation. But the core engine, I guess, from Cliffs of Dover is really interesting, because I mean, even when you compare it to DCS, it's like it has a lot of fidelity modeled. It has the problem of scale doesn't exist in Cliffs of Dover. Like, you can have really big scenarios with a lot of moving AI. The damage model is fantastic. And it's interesting because in an alternative world, if Oleg was given that 2 years and was able to really kind of keep it going, the mind does wonder, like, what would have happened? Like, would have Great Battles ever happened? Like, Cliffs of Dover could have maybe been the flight sim for 10 plus years, and we would still be playing it. You know what I mean?
Well, we hope that
Definitely.
you're still playing it, or still will be playing it once we get this new visual update done, which will be a whole new generation. But yeah, certainly, I have enormous respect for Oleg Maddox and the work that he was doing and his vision, and I think Ole does too. Everybody, as I said, who has
Mm,
worked on the game engine does.
It, I mean, the game does feel good now. Like me coming back to it, once I was able to key map everything, I started playing. Like it like I think within the first hour or two, I was like, oh wow, like maybe this is the IL-2 that everyone should be playing right now, because it has still an immense amount of potential, and in some ways it's like the only one doing certain things in World War II. So I'm very interested in the next expansions, which I guess we can go into now, because you guys have been working on it, and I'm sure people are curious on progress.
Yeah. So first of all, we're actually working on two separate updates. We're working on the new TF6 Dieppe, Fortresses and Focke-Wulfs Dieppe DLC, and we are also working on a comprehensive visual update that would also incorporate the ability for the player to use virtual reality headsets. And the visual update VR combination is in many ways as much of a step forward as TF6 Dieppe will be, because it will essentially be a completely new generation visually of the game. And it is also requiring an enormous amount of work. I mean, Ole can talk about that. He's been intimately involved in the development. He's currently working on our upgrade of the vegetation, moving from Speed Tree 5.2 to Speed Tree 8.42, and later to Speed Tree 9, and the improvements there. So there are two separate elements to our forward momentum, so to speak. Moving on to TF6 Dieppe, in terms of the progress, in a general assessment, I would say we are approximately 70% complete. Most of the 3D work on the new aircraft is well underway or nearly complete. The new updated version of the channel map is essentially finished. We are also currently revising the old channel map for 1940. So essentially, we have two channel maps. So there would be a 1940 version, and then there would be the later version for 1941-42. And so those are essentially nearly finished, and they incorporate all of the improvements, the rectification of a lot of the errors that were in the original game in terms of how the airfields were placed, how terrain looked, and so on. They are all in 4K as opposed to the original game, which was 2K. And as I say, we'll incorporate new vegetation, Speed Tree 8.42. And we also plan to incorporate a new cloud and weather system, which is the third-party Simul True Sky software, which will give us far more complexity in terms of our cloud and weather system and the types of clouds. We can go to full frontal systems in terms of cloud systems. We huge numbers of varieties of clouds, control of movement of clouds, and independent weather systems for different parts of the map, that kind of thing. So there is a lot of complexity and improvement that we're looking to bring to the community and bring to the players of the Cliffs game engine.
I think at this point it's also worth saying that this visual update, which includes, as Mike said, virtual reality, enhanced visibility distance, true sky, speed tree, and 4K textures, will be free. Yeah, because this will be an improvement of the core engine. So everybody who has ever bought Cliffs of Dover will get it automatically for free.
Yeah, so those people who have purchased only, our update Cliffs of Dover Blitz would still get this visual update. Those who purchased Blitz and Tobruk would get it. And obviously, the new DLC Dieppe would also incorporate this. Um, Back to touch the question of, okay, well, I'll let you ask that question about VR later. I think you had indicated you wanted to ask a question about that.
We can go out of order. We can go out of order. Let's just go where the mind wanders. You know what I mean? So I know VR. I have very strong opinions on VR. Well, do I have strong opinions? I have some thoughts on VR. I don't use VR. It's funny, actually, to me. I've had this video idea in my head. I don't know if I'm actually going to make it, but I've been mulling around this idea in my head, which is like VR is the cigarettes to sim gaming, because every person that tries VR can't stop talking about it, and I'm like, they're like so in love with it that they don't even want to touch games that don't have VR anymore, and it scares me because I'm like, I don't even, because it scares me that I'm going to like it, so I've been purposely avoiding it, but that's just like a funny thought that I've had in my head for a while. But yeah, I know you guys have been working on VR. I think the expectation was that it was going to come sooner rather than later. And I am just kind of curious because, I mean, not to put words in your mouth or to start a war with the VR people, but I mean, I have talked to other developers and it seems like they really lament VR because it seems like it's really hard to implement. But I know you guys have been beta testing it for quite some time. I'm sure COVID kind of screwed you guys up too, but I am curious.
Yeah. Okay.
The
So
funny
on the
thing is,
go ahead, Ollie.
the funny thing is, what you're just saying, I somehow feel the same. Yeah, and the problem here is that we have squads with a huge number of people where a minority uses VR, which means that the whole squad is not flying Cliffs of Dover anymore. Yeah, because they have a couple of members who use VR and they will not use anything but VR. So the whole squad moves to another game which supports VR. Yeah, there's a huge pressure, yeah, on developers to implement VR. And what you also said is that you hear from other developers that it's VR is problematic. Yeah, yeah, for the simple reason. I mean, you have to render everything twice, once for the right eye and once for the left eye. Meaning, any given machine and any given code, which could render the game at, let's say, 60 frames per second, will now render them at 30 frames per second for the simple reason it has to do everything twice, which is a huge problem. There's a huge need for optimization, which makes it a really problematic implementation.
So the good news is
Yeah,
that within our existing published version of the game, i.e., the one without all the visual update elements, i.e., the new vegetation, the new true sky, the new 4K. The existing version of the game, we have VR working pretty much flawlessly.
yeah,
It is completely functional there, and we've been getting very good response from our play testers who are looking at that. But, and I have to say this, we don't want to release VR solely on its own. We want to release it as part of this comprehensive visual update, basically a new generation visually of the game. And so we have not yet released it because we are trying to get VR to work with the True Sky adaptation and with the new Speed Tree adaptation and with 4K. and some other changes. We've improved our distance viewing, et cetera, et cetera. So, but we have to do this stage by stage. So we've got VR working with the base game. Now we're working on getting it to work with these other new elements, and that has to be done systematically, and as you know, isolated. Uh, um, Ole can talk about this a little bit more in terms of how we do have to be very systematic in terms of exposing VR to um, these other elements one by one.
Mm. Yeah, because of the simple reason that implementing VR really taxes the machine and the code and the engine. So if there's a flaw which might have gone unnoticed before, with using VR, it tends to come to the surface and creates unpleasant surprises like stuttering or even crashes or other things. So what Mike said, we got it working. It's fine. Yeah, but we have to integrate it and test it and adjust it to the whole game improvement, because it doesn't make any sense to release it now and then have everything crash when we release the next step.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So you know what? This is not the answer that I was expecting, but it actually, I don't know. Actually, to be honest, I don't even know what I was expecting, but that actually makes a lot of sense. And I actually think it's probably the best possible answer, because it sounds like there's light at the end of the tunnel. And the reason why it's, air quotes, being held up is because there's a lot of other big visual updates coming along with it. And it's going to come all at once, and it's going to look and feel good. So that all makes sense. I'm going to skip over some of the questions that I had, because and kind of get into timelines. But okay, so look, there's a lot of visual updates happening. There's the big update with new textures and clouds and all that. And then there's Dieppe, and I am curious if you guys, I'm sure COVID was a kick in the nuts like it was for everyone else. So what are you guys kind of thinking about for timelines for Dieppe? Because, and the reason why I ask, by the way, I don't even like asking about updates. I pat myself on the back too much, but like I kind of like that when I do these interviews, I don't really ask about timelines all too much, because I feel like everyone asks for that. But the reason why I ask for Dieppe is because I think there's a really interesting potential moment that could happen here, because I think I think with COVID, people really chewed through IL-2 Great Battles, which again, I adore that game. And I really like what Jason did with that, with trying to squeeze as much juice out of that existing engine. They really got a lot of life out of that game, and DCS, which I have played a lot of, but I'm kind of over now. But with VR coming, the visual update, Dieppe, it seems like all at once, all of a sudden, Clissa Dover is going to have like probably the biggest and most meaningful update out of like all the big flight sims, and it's kind of exciting, because this might be like the game turning the corner, so to speak. So I'm just kind of curious of like, are you guys thinking about it in that way in terms of timing, or kind of where's your guys head at?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, we want to release right now, but obviously that's not
Yes.
happening. We are basically working as hard as we can, and I can't really be specific in terms of a timeline, except to say that if we can release it this year, we will release it this year. If it's next year, we will release it next year. Um, all I can say is that I can't give you a specific date. I mean, Oleg used to play this same game, and he got burnt. It's like touching a hot stove too many times. You stop touching, stop reaching out. He used to have there was a famous line, 2 weeks for sure. Uh, we're not going to try and put ourselves in that position of promising something again and having, that not happen. So all I can really say is that we are working as hard as we can, and as soon as it's ready, it's ready. We we certainly do understand that there is an opportunity out there if we can get this game published, the new DLC published and the visual update released. That there certainly is an opportunity for us to rejuvenate the community for Cliffs and get people excited about the game again. We are excited ourselves, and we think there's a tremendous amount to be excited about. However, and I will go into this, we are being certainly challenged by situations that have occurred. Over the past 2 or 3 years and through COVID, we have lost a lot of our members to attrition and burnout, especially our 3D artists group. And we also lost some of them to competitors who can actually afford to pay them. Something which we can't do because of our compensation system. Basically, we are uncompensated during development. We only receive compensation after the game has been published. And because development typically can take quite a number of years, that's a long time for us to wait. We've also had a real tragedy occur in the last few months, and something which is really a huge loss emotionally for the team. That is one of our crucial members, a department head, in the same way that Ole is the department head for the programming. We had a department head for our 3D department. His name was Tamas Mart. He was from Hungary and was a huge part of this team. A really nice guy, someone who contributed in any number of ways, not just in terms of the modeling and mentoring our other 3D members, but in terms of his advice to the team generally in terms of which direction to move and all of those types of things that you expect from someone who is a real important person. Anyway, Tamas passed away suddenly due to cancer, and huge tragedy, not only for his family and everybody in TF who counted him as a close friend, but it has also left a huge hole in our group, and we're struggling now to find a replacement, having existing members step up, recruiting new members, and we're doing that. But, it has posed a real challenge to us, and it's one of the reasons why we've been progressing slower than we had hoped. The good news is that we are progressing, and we are confident that the DLC and the visual update can be completed. We are also convinced these need to be completed because there has been already a huge amount of effort put into them, and it would be foolish to abandon the project now. And we firmly believe our final product will be one which the community will value and enjoy, and which will attract a lot of interest. As you said, you are enjoying the existing version of the game, and you see the improvements that we've made. By the way, I have to mention, you have probably been playing the open release, the public release, and you haven't had the opportunity to play the VR beta, have you?
I don't have VR, but yeah, I haven't played any of the betas.
Yeah, you can still play the VR beta even if you fly in 2D. But anyway, the VR beta has all of these new elements like 4K, like map improvements, like the vegetation, like the blue sky, and so on. So if you really like the existing version of the game, when you get the opportunity to play the VR beta, you will see all of the improvements that have taken it so much further. And so all of this is, our reasons why we really need to complete the work that we're doing, and why we are definitely intending to complete the work we are doing.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a wild, crazy years since COVID happened, and I definitely understand with attrition and losses, how that can jam up project plans. So you have my empathy there, because you're it's just a crappy situation. So um you did mention something that we or touch on something that we haven't really talked about quite yet, but I know that UI has been something that's been requested a lot, and basically with VR being requested a lot, I was also thinking about UI, and I was kind of curious to unpack that if you guys have been thinking about that a lot, because I guess from my opinion, if I were to think about myself of why it took me a long time to come revisit Cliffs of Dover, it was really because one, it was just the old history of the initial launch, and just kind of that old, I just kind of forgot about the game, and then also the UI. But now that I remembered the game, I came back and I had to wrestle with the UI a little bit. So I'm kind of curious on any updates on that.
Yeah, okay, so I'll start and then I'll allow Ole to finish. Um, we have been able to recruit quite a few new programmers in the last year or year and a half. And these guys have been working on the visual update, but they are also excited to improve the game user interface, the UI. And they're starting now to look at this and starting now to look at ways that it can be improved. Ole, if you want to talk about that further. Bruno, who is another member of our team, was initially going to be here, but he's unable to attend. He could have talked about this further, but Ole, if you want to mention anything.
Mhm. The UI has been a complaint about Cliffs of Dover over all its history. And but the thing is that over the development, it was always more important, more pressing, more catastrophic things that we had to concentrate our time and energy on. Yeah, but as Mike said, recently we had an influx of new members. Yeah, and suddenly we have the capacity of dedicating time to that. Yeah, and there are two UX designers interested in joining Team Fusion. Yeah, which um, is good because they basically cannot do anything else because that's what their profession is. And so we expect to make some progress or a lot of progress there over in the future. Again, as Mike said, as this being a hobby for everybody and done in the spare time, it usually takes longer than one hopes it does. But as we're not a studio with professionals full time, it's impossible to make any forecasts on when that will be. But there's going to be movement and changes in this area, and I've seen drafts which I'm rather excited about. Yeah, but we'll see what will come of it.
Exciting. I mean, so what do you guys think about what I was saying earlier about, like, all these new textures, the VR, the new update? new UI? Like, I mean, are you allowing yourselves to get excited to think that maybe like there's a big corner to be turned, like there might be a huge influx of players? Because I mean, from a multiplayer perspective, the game runs great, and it's still. I feel like the game has aged really well because the bones. Might sound ironic, but like it's ironic because the launch was awful. But the bones, like the engine itself, like there's a good foundation there, and it seems like you guys have been able to kind of solidify the foundation and really build on it. And now like there's maybe a corner getting turned. Like, are you guys starting to get excited?
I certainly am. I think that the potential for the game, I mean, I've been excited about the game from the start, and it's been obvious to us. I think probably Ole could reinforce this comment as well. The fact is that we have seen the potential of the game from the very beginning, and we have seen what is possible. One of my own particular interests and ambitions is to see what I would call a fully integrated air, land, sea battle. And by that, what I mean is the possibility for the player to jump from the aircraft to a ground vehicle back to a ship and control them all and uh, you know have the ability to manage battles on a huge scale and control all aspects of battles. I mean, um, the game is still and will be in the future at its core a flight simulator, and most of the focus will be on there. But the giving the player the ability to jump into a tank and control formations of tanks, control artillery, um, control the movements, jump into a ship, control the direction of squadrons of ships or um, targets on which they fire and movement, etc. Um, and having all of these elements and all of these players operating within the game at the same time, you know, the kind of possibilities that allows. And the game, Oleg Matic's original concept for the game and the structure of the game engine allows for us to do that. We, we need to do work to fully implement his vision, but that is all built into the game and that is all available. So that's one of my pet things. I'm sure Oleg can add his own ambitions if he wants to talk about that.
What is apart from flying it, which I regularly do with my squad and enjoying it, and really appreciating the improvement of the game that others and I do, is what's exciting for me is that with the game's code, with the engine's code, I'm kind of learning from a master. Yeah, even so, he's not there. Yeah, and we're not allowed to contact him. And but well, not him, but them. I mean, Alec Maddox was probably the best, and but there were others. And I'm reading this code, and I'm learning from the code, and I'm learning how beautiful things can be done in the code, and it's quite exciting. Yeah, that to work with that code, yeah, and to learn from it, and then to expand its possibilities. Yeah? That is quite exciting from a developer's point of view.
This is so wild to me. It's so wild to me that like this this game that had a really bad launch, under the surface, the engine like is had a vision, and it just like you guys are like really unearthing it and just uh I mean, it, you know, it's I don't know. It's it's almost like this is like the most flight sim thing ever to ever happen to flight sims, because it's like we're all playing these other games, and then silently in the background, you guys have not given up, and you're working on this thing, and like this, want to agree with you with Maddox was probably a genius, because IL-2 Sturmovik is so good, and the the vision couldn't be realized, but you guys are really unearthing it, and it's like in the most non direct way, right? Like the game had to stumble and kind of get picked up by modders, and you guys to really champion it forward. So it's I mean, it's just really heartening to hear that like you guys didn't lose sight of like what was possible, because a lot of people, including myself, like completely discarded the game after it initially came out, and I've been pleasantly surprised revisiting it, and now I'm really excited for what's to come. So one, thank you. And I guess maybe to tease out the future even more, and to hype people even more. I know, I think you guys have been allowed to talk about what comes after the Dieppe / Fortresses and Focke-Wulfs expansion. So I maybe we can unpack that, and you guys can tease out what's to come after.
Okay, so when we were under 1C's publishing umbrella, we were restricted in terms of our what we could talk about in terms of future development. So we 1C was supposed to be doing all of the PR work for the game, and gradually we kind of said, well, look, we can do this, or we can create things on the forums and talk about this and that. Once Fulcrum purchased the rights to the game, they have opened up what we can talk about considerably. And so over the past year or so, we've actually published some detailed outlines. And so we've talked about Dieppe, which will include a revised map and a lot of changes. The next DLC that we are planning on releasing is kind of a mini DLC, and it will use the Dieppe map but focus on the night bombing environment from 1940 to 42. So it will use both the original and revised Cliffs of Dover Blitz map, which we're revising for this visual update, and it will involve the Dieppe map, which would cover 1941-42. So, and it will have as a centerpiece the Lancaster bomber, and then plus night fighter versions of the various aircraft, and also night bomber versions of the various aircraft which are already in the game. Beyond that, we go to a full-size DLC with a new map set in the Western Desert, and this DLC will complete the 1940 to 42 campaign that we began with Tobruk. Tobruk was limited in terms of the map area that it covered. It couldn't cover the eastern section of the of Egypt, and so it couldn't cover the El Alamein portion of the campaign. So this would cover that, and it would have as its centerpiece, in the same way that Dieppe has its centerpiece, the B-17 bomber. This new DLC on the El Alamein campaign would have as its centerpiece the B-24 bomber, which was introduced at that point and saw its first service in the Western Hemisphere with activity, in terms of bombing German and Italian positions in the desert. So following that, we want to create another a new DLC with a new map, and this would be simulating the battle for the central Mediterranean, um, with a focus on the islands of Malta and Sicily, and it would cover the period 1940 to 1943. So it would be um, everything from the declaration of war by Italy in June of 1940 right up to the summer of 1943 when the Allies invaded Sicily. So it would cover all of those elements. And the final DLC that we have in our list is one that we have very close to our hearts, and we would actually like to produce it earlier, but unfortunately, the demands of creating the huge map, which it would be required for this, um, are such that we have to put it, further down on the list. But this DLC would cover the gigantic air battles over France, Belgium, Holland, Germany, as the United States Army Air Force brought its strategic bombing campaign to destroy German industry and the Luftwaffe to the heart of Nazi Germany. So this is, a huge undertaking. Right now, or at least we have up to this point been restricted to 400 by 400 kilometer maps. But as Ole could explain, we are now looking at the possibility of expanding that to allow much, much larger maps. Ole, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, the current map size is roughly 400 by 400 kilometers. That is what the original developers unfortunately hard coded into the engine. And I'm slowly, whenever I have time to, I'm slowly changing the code and taking this hard coded thing out of it and making it configurable and to allow much, much bigger maps. But this is going to take some time. Yeah, but I'm looking at least twice the size, something like 600 by 600 kilometers. Yeah,
And
and
actually, I think I would be pushing for 800 by 800. But yeah,
yeah, but
certainly.
that is quadrupling. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you double the distance, you quadruple the size. Yeah, which means that we're talking. And just to give a thing is, let's say, if you're on a plane above Manston and looking towards London, what you see in view is about within 8 kilometers, you see about 300,000 trees. Yeah, and so quadrupling that, yeah, it increases the whole thing by a lot. Yeah, but we'll see where we go. I mean, I'm pretty confident that the engine can handle a lot more than it handles now. Yeah, but we will see in the course of the development how far we can stretch that.
I'm digging it. I think the middle of the Mediterranean would be really neat because that's a cool area. I don't know why, but I really like sinking ships. I don't know why, but anytime I see ships on a map, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go after it. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, we pride ourselves on having actually the largest number of ships available in any, including the original IL-2 Sturmovik game, IL-2 1946, and Pacific Fighters. We have more ships and types than any other published sim, and larger types too. These are large ships. No shade on great battles, but I think the biggest ship was a destroyer, and we've had multiple types of battleships, and we will be able to. We already have demonstrated that aircraft carriers are possible. We have already, demonstrated that multiple types of ships are possible and very large ones. So um, certainly the central Mediterranean uh, would demand a huge number of ships, and we're confident that we can provide those. In Dieppe itself, our upcoming planned release, we will be adding multiple new types of ships. The Scharnhorst class battle uh, um, uh, uh, battle cruiser. Uh, um, yeah, we also add a British battle cruiser, the Renown. We're going to be adding a German heavy cruiser. We're going to be adding several new battleships, plus some landing craft and so on. So to allow us to replicate the Dieppe landing properly. And also we want to do as part of this, because the Dieppe um, uh, DLC will not just be limited to August of 1942 when the Dieppe landing happened. It'll go from uh, essentially September of 1941 right up to September of 1942. So we also will include the Channel Dash Operation Cerberus, which was the German mission to get their battle cruisers and heavy cruisers from the Western French ports to safety in Germany. So they had to do a, a channel dash. They had to move through the channel in the face of British opposition, and they were successful in doing that. So we would like to replicate that as part of the DLC. So that's why we're including these ships. But yeah, we are looking forward to Central Mediterranean because there will be British aircraft carriers with flyable aircraft off them. There'll be lots more Italian types, battleships, and cruisers and destroyers, and smaller ships for the Royal Navy. Possibly some American ships. Hard to say, but possibly, and so on. So there certainly you will certainly get the opportunity to bomb lots of different targets.
Let me go off script for a second. One off script question, and feel free to swap my hand away. But I am curious. So you guys have a big plan for the immediate and for the foreseeable future. One thing I did notice: no Eastern Front. So my very prying question is, are you guys kind of not allowed to do the Eastern Front because of great battles? And the reason why I ask is because being primarily a great battles player, especially during COVID, I noticed that Great Battles was purposely avoiding the Mediterranean, and I think there was this perception in the community that like Great Battles and Cliffs of Dover were kind of avoiding each other's toes and not to step on each other. So I just am curious.
Yeah, well, you'd have to talk to Jason and 1C as well about that. I can say, yeah, there was a certain amount of mutual respect in terms of trying to avoid what, as you say, is stepping on toes. Right now, we are no longer affiliated with 1C. We're a part of the Fulcrum Publishing Group. So theoretically, we could go to the Eastern Front. I do think that the Eastern Front has been done extensively, and I think that from our perspective, it's more important to do Western areas, Western campaigns in in a modern sim. So that's our perspective. But for example, we have looked at the potential to do a Finnish campaign. That's certainly possible. We have looked at the possibility to do a Murmansk campaign, with all of the Lend-Lease aircraft and so on. Both the Finland and Murmansk fronts used a lot of Lend-Lease aircraft from America and Britain. And of course, there were the Finnish types, which were, various nationalities in terms of their origin. So that is a possibility, but I would say our focus is certainly at this point on the West.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. All right. Last two questions. How can people become involved in developing and testing IL-2 over? I know you said you guys were looking for help and then you found help. Like any particular people you're looking for, or play testers or developers or anything? You want to get the word out?
Yeah, we are very much looking for new 3D artists. This is the area that we are the most challenged in terms of our manning, the number of people we have available. So that would be the area. If anybody has experience in 3ds Max or Blender and is interested in doing modeling, then and we're not really looking at beginners. We're looking at people that are relatively confident. They don't have to be professional level, but people who are relatively confident in their capability of using the program. Then certainly we would welcome them contacting us. They can contact myself. They can contact Ole. They can contact whose name is Artist on the forums. I am Buzzsaw, and they can contact other members of the team on either the IL-2 forums, the ATAG forums, on our Discord channel, or otherwise. We are looking all the time for new programmers, even though we are staffed pretty well there. We're looking for people who have experience with Photoshop, because there are areas in terms of texturing and other graphics work where people who have experience with Photoshop can be of a lot of use. We are always looking for people to assist with the maps. I mean, if you'd like to see a new Germany strategic bombing map sooner rather than later, then please consider it. The experience required to do that kind of work is not actually that high. If you have a good understanding of the full mission builder in the game, then you can probably work with us, with a bonus being that, if you have Photoshop experience, and then, you could certainly look at joining us. We are open-ended in terms of our willingness to accept new people in. I mean, we obviously have minimum standards, and we expect the minimum level of commitment. Typically, members work between 6 and 10 hours a week on the game and development. So it does require, a certain level of commitment. But we are, an inclusive group, and any members, of course, would be compensated with revenue share. So, yeah, we are open for new members.
All right, great. Anything else you want to shout out into the void?
Yeah, just that we are still excited about the game and its potential. It's been a long process, and every once in a while you can get a little burnt out, but then you get excited about something again, and onwards and upwards. So we remain optimistic. We remain positive about our development work, and let's see how things go.
And
Ollie,
it's a
did you want
very, very nice team, because I mean it's fun to work together. I mean we work all over the world in many, many time zones, many, many languages, countries, backgrounds. Yeah, we have people who are originally nurses. We have nuclear engineers. We have actual pilots as well. And many interesting people, and it's really fun to work together. This is something I enjoy. I really enjoy this about Team Fusion. Yeah, that it's fun to work together and create this.
Great. I love it. I feel like I've said it a couple different times, but you guys saw something, you saw the potential, and you guys have been working on it. And not even getting paid full time on it, and you guys are really motivated and are keeping the vision alive. So I thank you. Really glad we did this. I've been playing Cliffs of Dover more, and I have been enjoying it. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where you guys go. If anyone's in the Cliffs of Dover community is doing any sort of events on multiplayer, let me know. We'll try to get the word out. I have been playing a few of them, so I'm hoping that as the updates come, the population comes roaring back, because I do feel like people are ready to gnaw on something new. And I thank you so much.